recording now. Okay, so welcome everybody to our session today on learning environments and learning for the future. We're really excited about this session. I think it's going to be great. So just to introduce myself, I'm Fiona. I work at the Lifelong Learning Centre, and you've heard from my colleagues Casey, Nadine and Jenny. And we're all here to support you today, and Nadine will be giving the presentation along with her colleague Anita. And then we're also going to hear from a couple of our students, Anna and Helen, who've very kindly given up their time today to talk to you about what it's like being a student at Leeds University. We'll also have an overview of the course, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end. So please do make the most of the session. Ask as many questions as you'd like to. We really want you to get what you need out of it, and please do enjoy it. This is just one of our sessions that we run at the Lifelong Learning Centre, and we'll talk a bit more about what else we've got running at the end of this session. So now I'm going to hand over to Nadine to introduce the session.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and thank you, Casey. You sounded super professional there, very clear guidance, and it's a good reminder for me as well. So it's so lovely to be doing a session with you all. And yeah, and just so you know who I am, so I'm the Deputy Programme Manager for the Learning and Teaching for the FD and the BA Top-Up, and I support Anita Collins, who's also here with us. She's the Programme Manager, and we'll both be contributing to the session. I'll be doing a bit more of it today because Anita's already done two, so she's done plenty so far, and now it's my turn to sort of do some work as well. So I just want you to reassure you that whatever you feel comfortable in terms of contributing is absolutely fine. So there's no pressure, there's no judgment, there's no expectation. So if you just want to sit there and listen, that's fine. Hopefully you'll feel like adding something to the chat if you've got any questions or anything, and hopefully you'll be engaging with the slides. But just see how you feel, and hopefully just enjoy it. And also, there may be some words that I use you don't necessarily understand, and if that's the case, you can always make a note and I can explain them later. But maybe just accept that maybe there might be some things I say that are new to you, and that's part of learning. It's pushing us outside of our comfort zone and learning something new, and we learn something from all our students every day. Which is great. I'm sure we'll probably learn something from you today, as we did the last session. I learned something about SEND from one of our participants, which was really nice. Okay, so oh, sorry, so this is me. I'm actually laughing because I did say earlier I've got my dungarees on today, so I'm feeling a bit casual. So yeah, probably would have dressed a bit smarter if it's face to face, but yeah, so this is how I look when I'm smart in the picture, and then obviously sometimes I wear dungarees. So there's my email address, but you can always look at our website, Lifelong Learning Centre, and staff, and you'd have the contact details for myself and Anita there if you wanted to contact us directly. So what we're going to look at today is learning environments. We're going to be thinking about these from three different activities, really. So the first thing we're going to think about is when we think about a learning environment, what do we think about? Then the next thing we're going to think about is, how do they change and why do they change and what kind of affects that? And then we're going to put on our creative mindsets and think about what could they be. So it's going to be those sort of three dimensions that we're going to sort of explore today. If we get time, I'm hoping to put you into some little groups, have a bit of a chat at the end, but we'll just see how we get on, see if I can try not to waffle too much. So I'm going to try and aim to have time to do that with you guys. Okay, so I want you to start by closing your eyes. So just relax, close your eyes, and I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds just to think about what do you see in your mind when I say what is a learning environment. So have a think about what comes to your mind, What kind of images do you have when you think about the learning environment? And either memorize what's in your mind right now, or you might want to write a few things on a pen and paper or something like that. But just think about a learning environment. What is that when you sort of think about that? And then now, if you can remember, at the top left hand, and honestly, don't worry, because I've only started getting used to teaching in this space, and I managed to like clear everything that all my students did the other day. So it's all quite new to me as well. But you press the T for the text, and then you can write something on this space. If you try in between the T and the little coloured circle, there's an eraser. Try not to press that because it does delete everything that's there. But the programme staff who are here to support us can move the text around, so don't worry too much about where it falls. But if you just want to write now what you had in your mind when you close your eyes, so what kind of things, and any contributions are all good. So whatever you had in your mind. So press the T and write down what you had in your mind. So if you want to have a go now, that'd be great. So you can write on this slide in front of us. So peaceful, quiet, big dusty library, classroom, exciting, great. Online, yeah, as we're doing now actually. Excitement and curiosity. Professional, that's interesting. I'm going to write a few things down. Neutral colours. So that's really interesting. Kind of what's coming up here is predominantly, so we've got the kind of the energy or the atmosphere. Books, supportive, motivating. Home, yep, absolutely. So then thinking about what you had in your mind, I now want you to consider, if you could tick actually, so you can just click on the pencil and you can do like a little tick like this. So if you could tick, if you had an educator in your mind when you close your eyes, you could tick the educator. If you had learners in your mind, you could tick learners. If you had content in your mind, so content could be things like the subjects that's taught, or the resources could be like the books. It'll just be interesting to see what you had when you thought about what is a learning environment. I'm loving these creative ticks. Wow, that's a big tick. So that's really interesting. So actually, it looks like most of you, if not most of you, had at least, it looks like possibly sort of 2 or 3 of those when you close your eyes and you were thinking about what a learning environment is. Now, even if we're just looking at these 4 elements, there are actually other elements that we're going to be considering today as well. But even with these 4 elements, there are sort of more complexities. So for example, an educator is not a robot. You know, we come in all vast different types of shapes, sizes, and different identities, and different belief systems and different values. So kind of who the educator is, the kind of identities that they bring, the kind of teaching style, all impact the learning environment either positively or sort of negatively. And I'm sure you've all got your own stories to tell about sort of being in the education system. So one example is I'm the first in the family to go to university. And also, I really believe that learning is emotive. So in my teaching, I'm very aware of feeling, and I'm thinking right now that I want you to feel comfortable So I'm quite open when I make mistakes, because actually, you know, if we can't be open and honest when we make mistakes, like the fact that I put my dungarees on today, how can we expect our students to sort of have a go and be comfortable with taking risks as well? Then thinking about our learners, obviously their previous learning impacts what they're going to learn in the here and now. But something we're very aware of in the Lifelong Learning Centre is lots of our students, and as well as children in schools, you know, what's going on in their lives impacts their learning. So as we know that some kids, you know, before they've even got to school, it's like, have they had something to eat? Has there been any sort of arguments going on in the home? Is there any money worries? You know, there can be lots of circumstances going on at home that can really impact how they are in the learning environment. Thinking about the content, so we've got the English national curriculum in terms of mainstream, and this is impacted by politics. So at the moment, we've got the Conservative Party in power, and they've sort of made big changes to the curriculum in terms of the kind of things that students are reading for English, bringing in lots of new topics for mathematics. They've made amendments to the coursework. So most subjects, you know, don't have that sort of practical element, which I know I did when I was doing my GCSEs, and I really valued. And similarly, when we think about resources, that can be staffing, buildings, everything from activities to sports activities to access to books and things like a paintbrush, paints, glue sticks. And these are all politically impacted because, you know, it depends how much money is in the pot. And unfortunately, that has been disappearing as well. So I want you to, again, think about what else is in the learning environment beyond the educator, the learners, the content and the resources. So if you could just write one or two things in this space, think about anything else that sort of comes to mind when you think about the learning environment that isn't one of those four elements. That would be great. Again, if you click on the T for text and your contribution there. So thinking about anything beyond the teacher. Brilliant. Support staff, fantastic, great. That's really, really important. And that can be in terms of inclusive practice, and also thinking about sort of pastoral support as well. What about the culture of an educational setting? Is there something about that? After school clubs, brilliant, yeah, great. And so thinking about what kind of provision is there, and actually who can take part in that, and to what extent do the children or adults have a say in that? Psychologically positive, yeah, great. So thinking about the atmosphere of learning and if the learners feel safe in that space. And I'm just going to move that one over here. And hi Rox, just noticed you've joined us as well. And Shahana Ali Khan. Vibe, yeah, absolutely. What kind of vibe is there? You know, it makes a massive difference, doesn't it, when you sort of enter a learning environment? Like, do you feel safe in that space? Do you feel that you're going to be respected? These are all really big things. Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about the religious values that the school culture may or may not have, and also the pupils that are attending that as well. So great. And some other things as well that I was kind of thinking about is the kind of power dynamics that can happen. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And also the impact of the postcode lottery in terms of where you live and impact to the type of learning environment that you'll go to as well. So, but that's brilliant. Great. Thank you so much for your contributions. It's really brilliant to see. So we're going to go on to the next slide now. So this is getting us to think, so now we've thought about what a learning environment is in terms of its core elements. Now I want you to think about that even though we have in our minds specific things when we think about a learning environment, like we might think about the dusty library or think about the books and things like that, they're actually spaces that are changing all the time, you know, from one term to the next, to the academic year. It's very complex and it's changed for lots of different reasons, and there's lots of different stakeholders that are in there in terms of like former students, the administrators, the ground staff, the bus drivers, governors, lots of different things. And we talk about things being in a state of flux, and that just means that they're in a state of change, so they're changing, they're not static, they don't stay still. Now, some of the reasons, I mean, there are many, but three sort of big reasons why why learning environments are in this constant change and in a constant sort of flux is for things like politics. We've already kind of touched upon that a little bit already. So that could be the reduced funding, which can have an impact on having big classes, so maybe 35, 40 students to a teacher in terms of the ratio. It could be impacted in terms of like what we talked about in terms of after school activities, like the kind of sports or arts that might be going on after school. We've also had changes, which has been positive in recent years, much more awareness about sort of mental health in terms of that well-being support and pastoral support in schools. However, because of politics, there's also an argument that there's been increased stress and anxiety because of this increase in testing at all stages of the mainstream education system. We also have what we call the hidden curriculum. So this is the kind of values that staff involved in the school culture can have, and they may or may not be aware of this. So one of the big things that we've had, unfortunately, really recently is the Black Lives Matter and sort of challenging, you know, why is the curriculum white? So, you know, the sort of dominant white middle class educators and sort of thinking about what resources, and also the government in terms of what they decide, what goes in the curriculum. There's been lots of positive challenges, which is absolutely needed and absolutely right, to sort of make sure the curriculum is more reflective of our society and everybody that's involved in the school culture. There can also be, we've also had recently changes in our society in terms of sex and gender. So now there's lots of acceptance that actually gender is as perceived by the individual. So this has impacted school in terms of uniform. So even though there are some schools now which dictate that girls have to wear skirts and not allowed to wear trousers, this has been challenged for religious reasons, but also been challenging in terms of gender as well. And also changes to kind of like toilet access, so who can access the toilet in terms of their gender. We've had discussions about sex education in terms of LGBTQ+ as well, and also thinking about politics, culture, society, isolation booths, and sort of policies on behaviour. I personally really don't want isolation booths at all. But again, these are kind of things that kind of come in, and you know, they need to get challenged and think about why they're using them, how are they using them, and sort of some of the issues that are kind of involved in those. And we're all going to have our own views on all these kind of topics as well. So in terms of the learning environment itself, there's lots of different elements that make that up. Predominantly, a lot of it can be focused on the cognitive, and what I mean by that is the learning and the knowledge. So it could be focused on the testing, it could be focused on, you know, what are you doing today as a learning objective. But actually, learning is much more than just the knowledge. You know, it's got a massive social dimension to it. It's also physical, especially in sort of primary and secondary education. And there's a psychological element all the way through the education system from all different stages, including when you're an adult learner as well. And so what we're going to focus on today is the social, the physical, and the psychological mainly. So again, going back to the beginning of the session, when I asked you to close your eyes and to think about what is a learning environment, I'm just wondering, if any of you had something like this in your mind. It was quite interesting that when I looked for an image to put on this slide, this was the first image that came up. And, when we look at the physical space and we look at how things have been ordered, it tells us a lot about a learning environment. So, for example, when I look at this image, this is making me think that this classroom has lots of assumptions going on in there. It's telling me that there is a hierarchy, there's a power relation between the educator and the students. So it looks to me, because the chairs are in rows and there's the mini desk thing for writing on there, that it makes me think that you've got to come in, you've got to sit down, you've got to be quiet, you've got to listen, and you can only talk when you're told to speak. And actually, there doesn't look like there's much physical movement that happens. So it looks like you're very much kind of learning individually, or maybe sort of speaking out in the group. But it looks like the communication can be restricted because of the physical layout of the room. So one of the things I wanted to talk about briefly today, and you can do your own sort of research into this after this session, is forest schools. I don't know if anyone's heard about forest school. If you have, it would be good to maybe just put in the chat if you have. But I'm going to assume that you haven't heard about forest schools. Oh, you got a tick, brilliant, or you can tick it. So forest schools have, it goes into kind of, oh, you've got a forest school area at your school, great, fantastic, brilliant. So that's really good that we've got people here that know what I'm talking about. So they learn, so this kind of learning is about getting outdoors. So it's very much not sitting your bum on a seat inside the classroom like this. It's about going outside, it's about being in nature, in all weather. It doesn't matter if it's snowing, if it's raining, because as long as you are, and actually living in Yorkshire, we should know this, as long as you're dressed appropriately, you should be able to go out and do things in all types of weather. It's very much about risk taking. So on this image here, we can see this child has got, I really hope that's called a handsaw. If not, you can correct me. But obviously they're using a piece of equipment that we wouldn't normally imagine be used in mainstream education. They're also physically moving around a lot more, which is great for their sort of physical health and mental health. There's a high amount of independence in this kind of learning, and also a lot of trust. And the teachers really sort of take a bit more of a backseat, and play and creativity is really a priority. And some of the things that happen in forest schools literally wouldn't happen in our kind of typical mainstream, say, English lesson, for example. The other image I've got here is looking at sort of social learning. So if we think again about the image with the desks sort of coming in, sitting down in a row, not having much ability to kind of really physically move around. This space, because of how the furniture is structured, so we've got tables around with seats. It looks like there's lots of project work going on there. There's different things going on the walls. So it looks like there's a space at the back. Maybe that's like an interactive board. We can go up and put ideas throughout the day. There's some really lovely informal, I mean, I don't know if they're bean bags, but I keep saying we should have some bean bags in our office at work, just to have that really nice informal sit down and have a chat about stuff. And it just looks like you can kind of move around, have a chat. It's very much about sort of supporting discussion, about supporting collaboration and supporting teamwork and those kind of social dimensions. And there's also technology in the room. We can see a couple of desktop computers at the back as well. So this is very different to what a learning environment might have been like previously, historically. So thinking about these two elements, I just want you to kind of think about what could take place if we had that kind of, so not having the bums on seats sitting in a row and you're just quiet. what could kind of take place when you've got sort of online technology, or you've got space to sit in groups with others on flat tables, or if you're outside learning. So again, those of you who've got forest school philosophy in your place of work, it'd be great for you to kind of add to this as well. So what can take place in terms of like feeling about learning, about activities that can take place, interactions, communications, kinesthetic learning. Brilliant. Sorry, let's have a look. Okay. Good, yeah, great. Creativity, having fun. I totally believe learning should be fun at all levels, especially with adult learners as well. Pupil-led, yeah, so rather than the teacher sort of dictating what happens when, it's very much about the pupil being able to have a bit of choice in what they're doing, when they're doing it, and how they're doing it. And then sort of kinesthetic, so learning by not just conceptually, but learning by doing, by active learning, by exploring, by taking part, like experimenting, like little scientists. It's great. Kind of a bit of water. I totally agree that better learning happens when we're having fun. I totally agree with that one. And I really think learning should be creative as well and enjoyable. So this is really good. This is starting to capture our values of what we have about what learning could and should be. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for your contributions. Oh, thank you, Anna. So that really leads us nicely onto the psychological. So this is a hidden dimension of learning. So quite often, and I don't know, some of you might relate to this, and again, you can put it in the chat too if it's something that's relevant to you. I know I have my own lived experience of this, where you don't necessarily feel like, I didn't feel like I fitted in at school. So when I went to school, I had free school meals, and I got a bit picked on and stigmatized for the kind of situation that I was in, and that really impacted my learning. So I'm very much mindful of that in my own teaching practice. So really, how we feel in terms of feeling safe, feeling accepted, or feeling alienated or judged for who we are will absolutely impact our learning. And it's so fundamentally important. So I just want you to take some time. I mean, gosh, I really wish that learning could always be like this image on the right, like a phone party, but maybe that's even a bit too extreme for me. So again, I'd like you to just add to this slide and thinking about, you know, what can take place, you know, and how can we create a sort of safe space? What kind of activities could happen, or what kind of policies could be put in, or how could staff be? So any sort of suggestions that you have about how we could create a safe space for learners in a learning environment, or how we could give a voice to people, whatever age they are, primary school children, secondary school children, how could they feel that they have a voice in the learning environment? And again, if you press the T to write on this slide, you can put your encouraging, yeah, and that encouraging can be by tone, so how questions are sort of asked, and creating a safe environment, having open lines of communication, so very much, and it's very much about being open to discussing things. Great, I love that there's more than one way to write a story, and absolutely being very open-minded and making sure that everybody feels included within that space. Yeah, listening, nurture room, fantastic. So great, and having that space where people can go and talk about their feelings and talk about their concerns. So this is when, you know, it's really going beyond the cognitive. It's going beyond like, what do you learn and how are you learning it and what grade have you got and what mark have you got? It's like, do you feel happy? Do you feel safe in that learning environment? And this is, you know, a really big part of what we do at teaching at university in the Lifelong Learning Centre. We, you know, we really passionately believe in this. And absolutely having awareness of any mental health issues or challenges that are going on with our learners, and thinking about how we can best support them and not make them feel excluded. Great, fantastic, brilliant. And yeah, absolutely inclusive practice in terms of thinking about the needs of all learners, whether that's about having dyslexia or autism, and thinking about what kind of resources or staffing is needed, one-to-one support. Brilliant, fantastic, that's great. We could go on forever. And some other things are kind of, you know, asking people how they want to be referred, like what is your preferred name, you know, and having that kind of respect, or making sure that, you know, there's clear thought that goes into any sort of activities, so that people who don't necessarily have the funds to take part can actually still take part. So yeah, that's brilliant, great. So now I'm trying to think if we have got time. I don't think we have got time, unfortunately, to go into the breakout rooms, unless anyone feels differently, they can butt in. But at this point, I want us to think about everything we've just talked about, throw it out the window. So we don't know what a learning environment is. We've got absolutely no idea. We've never seen one. Don't worry about being late. It's absolutely fine. You're here, so that's brilliant. So what I want you to think about now is, what could it be? Not what it is, what could it be? And really think outside the box. So I've got a few slides to go through in terms of, but you're inputting into this, and I'm going to not be saying very much. So first of all, I want you to think about, what could the content be in a learning environment, and who could put that content together? So who could have decide what is learnt and why and how, rather than it being the government. So again, if you click on the T, so you could, the wider community, brilliant. Kids, absolutely, the kids, why don't they have a voice in what they want to learn? Brilliant. Teachers as well, yeah, because actually they get given the curriculum and they've just got to run with it. And quite often they don't have much flexibility as well, and they don't necessarily have as much trust in some places that they could have. So that's great. Yeah, parents, carers, absolutely. And what impact do you think that would have? So let's take, for example, having the children with a voice in what they are going to learn. How do you think they would feel about that? What impact could that have on their learning? They might enjoy it more. Yeah. How do you might think they think about that content? So when they look at it and they've taken part, you know, they've helped decide what they're going to learn. So a sense of pride, fantastic, brilliant, absolutely. They might interact more because they've actually had a say in it, and motivate them because it's more relevant to them. Brilliant, fantastic, great. Oh, I really love your contributions. Thank you. I hate having to press on, but this is obviously a taster. In a real session, we could do this for, say, half an hour, but we haven't got time for that today, unfortunately. So on the next slide, what I would like you to think about is, again, imagining that we don't know anything about a learning environment, but thinking about the needs of society and the future. What could a learning environment have? What could it be thinking about in terms of how learning could take place? So rather than thinking about testing and exams, what could be done in terms of thinking about assessment? You know, how could it be done differently? What about place, time? Maybe thinking about what's happened recently with COVID, it might help you think about what could it be, rather than what it is at the moment. So assessments and lessons, yeah, brilliant. So rather than just waiting till the very end, so we call that summative assessment, why not have more assessment that's actually happening within the session itself? And great, so actually what we've had with COVID and thinking about the impact on sort of GCSEs and sort of thinking about end exam grades is having the teachers think about a predicted grade, which are actually argued to be pretty spot on a lot of the time. Oh, politically, if we had internet access for all, that would be really fantastic. And as we've realised with COVID, that's created a lot of challenges in terms of if people have got access to the internet, and if they have, what kind of access do they have? And absolutely marks on effort. You know, and I'm sort of thinking about project work. You know, a lot of working in the real world, it's working in teams, it's working collaboratively. You know, our school at the moment, it's very much about individualism. You know, it'd be great to have, you know, much more of a learning environment where you're working in groups, and sort of getting assessed on your contributions to that group, and sort of thinking about what individually do you want to do in terms of that, and having a lot of choice. Absolutely practical solutions. So going beyond the kind of concept sort of thinking about textbook stuff to actually doing like real life versions of what you'd be doing in the real world. So that would be fantastic. Music and dance. Actually, yeah, at the moment, we've had such a change in, unfortunately, with the funding cuts in terms of how we've got this hierarchy of maths and English and science. But wouldn't it be great for all subjects to be equally respected and equally contributed? Fantastic. And we've got differentiation here. Thank you very much for your contribution, Winona. So thinking about different ways that people want to learn and how they can learn and what they're bringing to those sessions and how to best support. That's brilliant. So now going on to the next slide, I just want you to think about, is there anything else that you would like to add, that you would like to see change in our education system? So imagine you are in charge of the whole education system as of now. What are you going to do? What changes are you going to? Brilliant, no stats. I love that. Oh my gosh, I totally would back you on that one. Great. What else could we change? True inclusivity, absolutely, because a lot of the time what is said should happen doesn't necessarily always happen because of, again, quite often it's down to money, unfortunately. More freedom, yeah, for everybody. More freedom about the content, more freedom about maybe the timings, the location. Absolutely, more home learning. Like, why does it always have to be? You know, some schools are starting at 8:15 in the morning. Yep, more. And actually, yeah, thinking about each side of the learning environment. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely would support less uniform, or thinking about how could it be just maybe one cheap sweater and you just shove a badge on and nothing else, so it's not this hundreds of pounds that people are having to find every year. Absolutely, and lots of extracurricular activities. You know, there's lots of families that can't afford to send their children to, say, football or to arts class or something. Actually, if schools were able to provide these things for everybody, that would be really fantastic. So these are really brilliant ideas. And I'd just like on the last slide, for the last bit of this, if you wouldn't mind adding into it, is to think about today's learning environment. Is there anything, you know, what have you done? What is today's learning environment? What has it been about? Can you think of what it has involved? Who's been part of it? How have you interacted? Have you done anything different? How did you feel about being part of it? Anything surprised you? Have you learned anything? Did anything make you feel uncomfortable? Has anything made you feel a bit more less anxious? Did you like my dungarees? Sorry. Active learning, brilliant. So we really believe in a lifelong learning centre that we don't want you sat there on a chair, not doing anything. It's very much about in-group learning. So you're not in a lecture theatre, it's very much sitting at flat tables with others and you're sort of given problems to solve, and it's lots of talking, quite a lot of laughter, and yeah, great. Gaining confidence in learning online, brilliant. Yeah, and you know what, it's new to all of us. So as I said today, this is my first online taster. I was really nervous at the weekend when I started putting ideas together for this, and actually I've really enjoyed it. So I've become less worried about taking part, and I really hope you feel the same as well. Yeah, reduce the number of students in a class. I mean, wouldn't it be great if, and actually in the Lifelong Learning Centre, we typically have quite small numbers in our sessions. So we have, say, might be 12, 15, 20, but we don't have the kind of 40, 60, 80, 100 numbers that maybe some other universities might have. Yeah, good, great. Childcare as well. So thinking about the impact of that, fantastic. Great. Any comments about how you found today? You might want to put it in the chat as well, or if anyone wants to put their microphone on, you know, to comment, feel free. Okay, great. I'm just aware of time, so I'll carry on going through the slides, but thank you so much for your contributions. I've really appreciated that. So that's the end of the in terms of the sort of session itself. And now we're going to hear from our current students.
Thank you so much, Nadine, for that session. I've found it absolutely fascinating, and thank you everybody for your contributions. I think we had a fantastic online discussion there, so that was brilliant. So now we're going to move on to the part of the session where we hear from our students. So as I said earlier, we've got Helen and Anna, who are going to tell us a little bit about what course they're doing, how they're finding studying, and also kind of how they got to the Lifelong Learning Centre. And as you're listening, please do think about questions that you might like to ask them. So I don't know who would like to go first, but maybe Helen, would you like to start?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Helen, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helen. I am just in the process of finishing up my third year of the foundation degree teaching and learning. And I can assure you that the session that Nadine just did is very much a reflection of what we do, because she's one of my current tutors. I am not your average student. I feel I'm slightly older than what the image of a student is. I came to Lifelong Learning Centre late on in life, having had to leave my dream job, my dream career, due to medical issues. Went and thought, what am I going to do? I've worked with children a lot of years, so I wanted to work in education. So I was at Leeds City College doing my GCSEs, and I met Fiona and another lady, Olivia, who came in and said, so what are you going to be doing next? How about coming to university? And in my mind, little snigger going, no, not me, I'm too old, I don't have any money, I can't do it. And I put those ideas and barriers to both of Fiona and Olivia, and every single one of them, they said, no, you're not too old, and gave an instance of someone who's older than myself. You don't have to worry about paying up front. You're going to be eligible for student finance. If you don't get maths, if you don't get the English, we can do matriculation. So figuring out what, other ways that I could join in, and basically made it so I didn't have an excuse not to go, and I was really excited because my education experience when I was a child was not a good one. I didn't enjoy school, and was quite sad in a way. I was actually told, you'll never go to university, Helen. So got that one wrong, guys, didn't you? So I work full time as a teaching assistant, and I leave school at 12 o'clock on Wednesday, ready for my 1 o'clock session. with down at the university, and I love it. If I say one thing, if you guys take away from this, book a guidance session, talk your options through, and just give it a go, because honestly, it's one of the best things I've ever done, and the staff will support you 110% to make sure that you succeed. And I'm on the Facebook group, so if there's ever any questions that pop up, I'm more than happy to answer those, as you know, coming from the student point of view. But yeah, it's the best thing ever. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Helen, for those inspiring words. And if you've got questions for Helen and for Anna, just do pop them in the chat as well. So as you heard, Helen's working full-time and studying part-time and fitting it all in. And thank you for mentioning the Facebook group. We will put the link up and we'll send it to you at the end. It's if you look at Returning to Study Lifelong Learning Centre, champions are there online to answer your questions as well. So thank you so much, Helen. I'm going to ask Anna now if she'd like to tell us a bit about her learning. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Anna.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna. So I didn't do learning and teaching. I did professional studies as my main degree. But in my first year, I picked a module which was the SEND module, which was fascinating. Pretty much like today, things that you'd probably not even thought of before that's linked with learning. So I've absolutely loved today. It's been really, really interesting. Similar to Helen and maybe some others, I didn't, really have a great experience at school. I never thought uni was for me. I did okay in my GCSEs, nothing really brilliant. And I didn't do great in my maths, so I went back to do functional skills maths, and then I did my GCSE, and it was my tutor there, meeting Fiona and Olivia, that said, why don't you come to university? And oh no, that's not for me. Anyway, I've just finished my third year doing professional studies, so I did go to university, and it just went in the blink of an eye, and I've absolutely loved it with a passion. But I think the thing, just linking in with the learning and teaching, the thing I've enjoyed the most is the interaction. Because I've always sat at a desk and done as I was told, I didn't really know there was any other way until we got to uni. And we had one particular lesson with Lego, and it was brilliant. So we were all, mature learners playing with Lego. But did we remember that session? Yes, I think we'll remember it forever. It would move around and making what we were learning, we made it out of Lego. So we were sort of making robots, but that's another story. So it was, but I sort of realised that connection between moving around and having fun, making it fun, made you remember it. And my daughter, she's 10, and she's had a teacher when she was in year 4, and he was very similar. He would move all the tables. They would all have to, take some sort of responsibility for something whilst working as a team. And she just came on leaps and bounds. There was such a change in her. And then this year she's had a more traditional sit down, do as you're told. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but for me, I could just see, for me and for her, we definitely came on when it was more involved. So I also found out when halfway through my first year at university that I'm dyspraxic, and I just think maybe that was something that held me back at school. I think they might have known, but nobody ever really mentioned it, or wasn't tested or anything. So as soon as I found that out at uni, that just pushed me on even more. Lots of support. You can't get more support than you'll get at the LLC. And it helped in terms that I sort of look at things from a different angle, or sometimes you get a question in class, I'll pick the question probably that nobody else picks. And it just sort of helped with my learning and developing learning within the class, of learning from each other. I have also, I don't know if anybody's maybe a bit worried about the online learning, but I've found that the LLC and the tutors have moved the learning online so quick and so efficiently. So I've had a really good online learning experience. And obviously I could still access the libraries, so that wasn't an issue either. And I did my course full time. I did part-time work and, still have my daughter at the same time. So I think once you get into it, you are committed to it and you want to do it. And if you're having fun whilst you're learning, then you'll be there in no time. So I hope you go for it, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Anna. And like Helen, you were so inspiring and you've covered so many things. And thank you as well for mentioning the support that's available at the Lifelong Learning Centre. As you mentioned around dyspraxia and dyslexic, and Helen's mentioned that as well. We really do have a great deal of support. Our job is to support people in any way they need. So we have learning support, we have social support, we have advice and guidance, we have financial support whilst you're at university. So it's very much a kind of cushioned environment to be learning in. So thank you for that. And Jenny's also put in the advice, she's put in the chat the advice and guidance links as well, which we will talk about in a minute. So thank you so much to our learning champions for that. And just going to mention about the student finance. I know everybody's got different levels of knowledge on this, but just really these are a few key points for anybody who might be worried about the finance. That there's no upfront fees, so it's not money you have to give the university. The way it works is government loans are available for tuition fees and for living costs, and you only start repaying this once you're above 26,500. And it's not like a kind of traditional loan, it's actually more like something you contribute to once you've become a student. So when you're only 26,500, you start paying back a small amount and it comes through your salary. So your employer has to remember to pay it back, not you. And if you never pay it back, it doesn't matter. It gets wiped after 30 years, or you might pay some of it back, and that's fine as well. We've also got grants available for disability support and dependent support, but with everybody's situation is different, so do come and get some advice and guidance. So next we're going to hand over to Anita and Nadine, who are just going to talk a little bit about the programme itself and how it's structured, how you can apply. So I'll hand over to you, Anita and Nadine, now. Thanks.
Hi, me again. Thank you, Fiona, and thank you again, Helen and Anna. Honestly, our students are just amazing. Like, we can tell you as staff what the learning experience is like, but really you get to hear the reality from our students, and they're just brilliant at giving up their own time. So thank you again for that openness as well, of sharing, quite a bit of personal information. It's really lovely of you to do that. Okay, so 10 minutes. So what we're going to do now is go over sort of the key elements of the programme. There's lots more information on the website. We've definitely got lots of time and support to give you beyond this, so please don't feel you've only got this 10 minutes. This is just to give you a very brief kind of overview. So what we have is the foundation degree in learning and teaching, but we also have a foundation degree in learning and teaching with SEND. So there's like 2 different pathways in our FD and our BA top-up. So we've got kind of 2 cohorts. Some students are doing learning and teaching, and some students are doing learning and teaching with SEND. So in terms of why you would decide to come and learn with us, apart from us hopefully being brilliant educators and it being fun, and you get to learn with Lego, we are specifically designed for people that are working in the workplace. So we know that our students have got various commitments. We know our students are typically working sometimes nearly full time, and they might have just one afternoon off to come to university. And also our students can be working with anything from very, very young children and reception up to adults. So it's a whole spectrum of age. Could be working in a community. We've got somebody on a program that's an educator working in sort of health and beauty. So there's lots of different, it's not just about mainstream school settings. So it's lots of different kind of practices. The whole program, in terms of what we focus on the content, the kind of activities that we do, is always linking practice to theory. So it's very much drawing about what you do in the workplace and thinking about how we kind of look at that in terms of theory. So an example of that might be, there's a module in the foundation where you basically think about improving something in your setting, and you actually have to read about what other people have done who've had that kind of challenge. So it might be how do you get a different form of communication to take place in terms of student to student. What could you use in terms of technology, for example, or how could you make it more playful? So then you'd be looking at what other people have done, and then it's actually trying out. So it's really creative. We've got so many brilliant ideas going on in our program, you know, and it's just fascinating, and it's, you know, it's a real joy for us to sort of see. And as I said before, we've got this option where you can become a specialist in terms of special education needs and disability. So there's a lot of choice within the program, and really you can kind of tailor it to you as an individual, what you want to do and who you want to be working with. In terms of the more practical element of the program, it takes place one afternoon a week. So that is 4 hours. It's 1 till 5. We do support that as much as possible in the sense of trying to make sure that you have breaks in between the modules. You know, our students bring food to the sessions, and it's very relaxed. So we're very aware that when you come to learn, that, you know, quite often you've come from work, or you've come from, you know, maybe caring for a parent or something. So you're not sort of coming in just having just woken up. So we're very sort of mindful and sort of very supportive in terms of that. And so, you know, if you need to take a bit of a breather, it's absolutely fine. And the program's taught 3 days a week, so Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So the Tuesday is allocated for our year 1, so our new students. The Wednesday is our FD year 2 and year 3. And then the final day, the Thursday, is the next degree, which is the top-up degree of the BA. So the actual program is taught over 2 semesters, and what that means is a semester is like a block of time. So semester 1 sort of typically begins sort of very, very late September, nearly early October, and that goes on till December. Then after Christmas, it starts again in late January, so there's actually quite a big break at Christmas. And then there's another break in the middle of that semester at Easter, and then it finishes in May. So the semester just refers to basically, it's like the whole academic year chopped into 2 big blocks, which are 10 weeks each. And there's breaks within that, but it definitely fly by. Honestly, you wouldn't believe it. In fact, some of our year students that just finished the BA, they were saying, where did those 5 years go? It was like when they started it felt like it was going to be forever, and they can't believe that they're leaving, and they're really sad about leaving us, which is really lovely. But the foundation degree itself is over 3 years, and obviously is part-time, and we are educators that have studied part-time ourselves, and I did 13 years of part-time studying as a mature student, so I know what it's like to be a student parent. I know what it's like to be working full-time studying. We know what it's like when you've got sort of financial concerns, when the washing machine breaks, you know, all these things that can happen. You're sort of juggling various different things. So we're very much here not just to talk about new knowledge and content, but to really think about how to support you in terms of how to be a part-time student. You know, we share lots of tips, and actually students share tips themselves in terms of, you know, how to kind of manage it. So we talk about that a lot. It's about how to learn, not just what you're learning. With the FD, you basically, once you start on the programme with us, you have an automatic right to go onto the top-up. But we support you with that, so you don't even have to worry about that too much now. But once you are on the top-up, you've got the option of doing that in 18 months, or you can do it in 2 years. The vast majority do take the 2 years. But again, that is a bit of a far way off. And there's a link there in terms of looking for more information on the programme itself. Now, the typical entry requirements are to have GCSE Maths or English at grade C or 4 or above or equivalent. However, not everybody does have that. So again, this is something we can discuss on an individual basis, because we do have our own matriculation, which is kind of our own version of the sort of GCSE, which can be taken as well. So please don't let that put you off. If you're somebody who doesn't have those, don't let it put you off. Just talk to us. We also, in terms of the FD, need you to have a level 3 qualification. So, for example, a diploma in teaching and learning. But again, if you don't have that, just talk to us, and, there's always possible alternatives as well. You do have to have relevant work when you're doing the programme. But this is for a minimum of 60 hours a year. And again, quite often when people come, they might not really have that set up. But, again, just talk to us. We can only help you if we kind of know what your circumstances are. And quite often we've got loads of contacts in the programme, and obviously as staff. So, if you're stuck, we can, try and help you with that as well. In terms of, so what we have in every year is you do something that's called a module. So for example, from sort of September to December, you would have 2 modules. And then after Christmas, you do a module. So the whole first year has 4 modules. And these are the titles of the modules. So there's academic and professional skills, which is a module that I teach. And that's basically assuming that you don't have any skills to be a university student. So it really is starting from scratch. And it's talking about sort of where to access information, how to critique information, and things like that. Then you do a module, what is learning? It sounds easy and straightforward, very much like a learning environment, but actually how we learn is more than what we think at times. So you sort of really go into depth about that. Then you're doing a module about child development, sort of typical and atypical development, which very much ties into the kind of SEND element of the programme, and then very specifically inclusion and SEND. So those are the 4 modules in year 1. There's obviously a lot more detail behind those, and again, you can look at the details on the website. It's got a breakdown of the module content on there. Then going into year 2 of the FD, developing teaching skills, education perspectives and policies. So basically what happens in policy doesn't always happen in practice. And then students that have decided to do the SEND, so special education needs and disability, those students do work-based learning. So they link very much what they're doing in the workplace to the programme itself. Then in year 3, this is when we start to get, so this is, oh, that's great to hear. Thank you very much, Helen. So we've got, this is when you start to get introduced to research. So this is about thinking about how to be a practitioner and how to think about making change in your setting. We start to look at the curriculum, what that is and what assessment is and how it can be and how it could be. And critiquing it, so what's kind of positive or what kind, very much like what you've done today, in fact. And then there's kind of thinking about how could you improve your learning environment, what could you create to make it better, and how would you evaluate that? There's other options that can be taken as well. So there's a coaching and mentoring module, there's a using stories module, which is really creative. There's an introduction to dyslexia, and also counselling skills. So there's a wide variety, and I'm hoping you can start to see how you can kind of tailor the programme to suit how you develop as a student, and in thinking about your own practice and where you kind of want to go. So lots of choice, which is great. So as we talked about earlier, the programme is very much based about, we call it a practice-based programme, so it's very much thinking about the reality of what's happening in your work practice and sort of linking up to theory at university. So basically what they say in books, does that echo what happens in the real world, and vice versa. You're talking all the time, very much like, we've had some input today, so it's drawing about what happens in your workplace, and it's fascinating. We're learning all the time. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had a session with our students where I haven't learned something. So we're all learning. The educators on this program are learners too, in a sense that we are learning from our students, which makes it really, really fascinating. And because we've got such a mixture of students in different settings, you're all learning from each other as well. And yeah, we think about the sort of digital technology element of that as well, which is really great. We've got so many things going on with our students at the moment. Honestly, we've got students going off on to do MAs, teacher training. We're receiving emails on a daily basis about new roles that our students have been involved in terms of jobs that they've just got, or new responsibilities that they've got. It's really fantastic, and we really do share this throughout the whole 5 years of the programme, and also students that have been with us and left come back and talk about the new roles that they've been taking on, which is really fantastic. Anita, sorry, I'm really realising that the time is whizzing by. Anita Collins is our lovely programme manager, and she's going to talk now. I'll shut up.
No, thank you, Nadine, for all of that. I'm just going to quickly just thank you very much. Snow, I think you were asking about the difference between the two pathways, and I'm not sure we've highlighted that quite yet, so I'm just going to say you'll see in the modules we went through, there was only one module in the foundation degree where it says SEND pathway only. So actually the difference between the SEND and the non-SEND pathway is very little. It's just that in that second year, in the second semester of the second year, you take a work-based learning module where you do a placement in a different SEND context, and you reflect on that and write that up. Apart from that, you do exactly the same as the main, the kind of generic. We have a lot of SEND, as you can see from those modules that Nadine's just gone through, all the way through the programme. There's a really strong SEND thread in our generic modules as well, in our options like dyslexia. And then when you go on to the BA top up, there's an autism module option as well. So actually it's really about, do you want to have SEND in the title of your degree? Because in practice there's very little difference between the two. Obviously, like, there is that one module difference. So that's really it. And what I'd say as well is, if you're not sure between the two, don't worry. If you apply for the course, when you come to interview, you'll have plenty of opportunity to talk that through and ask questions about that, and then decide. And once you're on the programme, you can move between the pathways. People do that. So you don't need to worry too much about that at this stage. But it really is about, do you want to have SEND in your degree title programme? I think that is almost like the key thing. And if you're interested in SEND, we do lots of SEND throughout both of the pathways. So I think that's the key thing really I wanted to say, and just to kind of reiterate what other people are saying about, it's very much an applied programme. If you're working in education or wish to work in education, you're going to find that there's so much all the time that is directly relevant to what you're doing, and we're drawing on that all the time. So yeah, those are the key things really.
Thank you very much for that, Anita. Have we got any other questions from people at the moment? Not at the moment. Oh, sorry, Anita.
Sorry, I just should have said, I forgot about this slide. This is just a link to a lovely sort of short video clip of one of our current BA Year 1 students. BA Year 1 students on her in her usual sort of setting. She's a lead for autism in a primary school in Leeds, and it just shows through her day, including her graduation, and it's a really inspirational video. So if you do have time, we'll be sharing these slides with you, so do have a look at that link and enjoy that video. Yeah, so I think that's any questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anita. Nadine, is there anything else that you would like to add at the moment?
Sorry, I just turned my thing off. Just that I just want to kind of remind everybody that the learning environment is small groups, so it's kind of like, say, 15 to 20 students. It's flat tables. You're not in a, quite often when people think about university, they think about lecture theatres with like thousands of people sat on seats in a lecture theatre. It's not like that at all. We've got tables. It's all very much discussion based, so it's kind of, we don't talk like loads. We might talk for, say, 15 minutes to give you some new information, but then it's very much over to you guys, you know, to discuss, to problem solve, to kind of make sense of it, and then feedback. So it's very active learning, which hopefully gave you a bit of a flavour today. But you know, you'd be doing even more input, and we'd be doing even less. It's kind of the approach that we do, and it's very, you know, it is very supportive. We really get to know our students really, really well, because we don't have massive numbers. You know, we get to know our students, you know, in terms of their home circumstances, in terms of any caring responsibilities they have. So we're not just chatting about how you're getting on with your assessment work. It's very much like, how are you? You know, how's your son or daughter? Are they okay now because they were poorly last week? You know, it's very much that holistic teaching practice. Can't talk anymore.
And thank you, Helen, for putting in that the assessments are mixed as well. That's a really good point. You know, we don't have any exams, and you know, our assessments are kind of, you know, based on, you know, it is an academic context, so you do some essays and reports, but a lot of them are linked to practice, in the sense that, like, you write a lesson plan, you do a micro teach, lots of presentations, because you know, we're wanting you to get up and develop kind of confidence and in sort of in leading learning and that kind of thing. So we do that in lots of different ways. So yeah, thanks, Helen, for flagging that, because I think a lot of people think it's going to be exams, and we don't do exams on our programme. Yeah, it's all continuous assessment with typically 2 assessments per module.
Thank you, Anita. So you can I'm sure get the sense that you get really well looked after, really well supported doing the learning and teaching course, and I think it's true across the whole Lifelong Learning Centre that we really, really value students' life experience and your input. So thank you so much, Nadine, and thank you very much, Anita, and thank you to Anna and Helen, our learning champions, and also to everybody for taking part. And as has been mentioned, we will be sending you resources from the session today. So could I just ask, if you've signed in with a different name from your email, could you let us know so we can send you the resources? So you can maybe just email us separately, or put it in the chat if you want to, because we want to make sure everybody has got the resources. So just moving on, I know lots of people have asked about advice and guidance, and we do have our advice and guidance service here. I'm just going to share my video so you can see me now. We do have our advice and guidance service at the Lifelong Learning Centre. So this is a chance to have a one-to-one chat with, we've got Mohammed or Denise, one of our guidance workers, really about your plans, your future, what you'd like to get out of education. And they can, of course, talk about courses at the Lifelong Learning Centre, but they can talk about college, they can talk about any plans you might have, and they will discuss the finance side of things, but also your whole situation. So if you've got children, if you're working, if you've got caring responsibilities, how everything fits in. And actually the part-time courses, like the learning and teaching courses, are a really good way to study and fit all the rest of your life in at the same time. And as our students have said, the time just flies. So we've got the contact details here, and we will send them to you. The email is adviceandguidance@leeds.ac.uk. So this is one service that we offer to everybody who hasn't been to university, no matter where they're thinking of studying. And thinking about what we've got next coming up, I'll just give you a little idea. So we've got more sessions coming up from the Lifelong Learning Centre. Tomorrow we've got a session at 2 o'clock called Getting into University, which is very much about different questions you might have in general about university. We've got an evening session at 6 o'clock run by Lynn, who teaches our preparation for higher education for foundation year, and that's going to be really interesting on civil disobedience, so kind of crime and deviance, very interesting. And then next week on the 16th we've got a session on student finance, so please do feel free to sign up if you haven't already. So I am going to stop the recording now and just ask you if you would mind filling in our poll